They made me their hunter, just so my commander could kill me himself. Please give my story a chance. I dream to one day that my stories will reach many. I was sure what flair to use. Sorry if that's the wrong one. Chapter 2 is almost finished, and I'm writing 2 more stories as of right now. Chapter 1, Beneath the Red Light. Ever since I was born, I was told I didn't. Mother said it was because I was other children. Said it was because my blood was wrong. They didn't just want me to feel unwanted. They made sure I believed I wasn't even supposed to, wouldn't let me play with them. I had no friends. I wasn't born under the Black Star. I wasn't even born in a sanctioned district. I felt so alone. No, I was alone. The only thing that ever embraced me were the shadows of the dark sky that swallowed our world. But I'm older today. My quiet life as a simple farmer has come to an end. I adjusted my collar, feeling the itch of the stiff, starched fabric digging into my neck. Today was my first official day. First time wearing the inspector's uniform. It felt oversized, swallowing me up like a child trying to dress as a man. The room was dim, bathed in the harsh red glow of a single overhead light that swung slightly, casting strange, shifting shadows. The red bulb overhead sputtered faintly, barely lighting the room enough to see without strain, but still valuable. I couldn't say the same for myself. I sat on a foldable canvas cot, the rough fabric pressing into me as I tried to sit up straight, hands clasped tightly in my lap. The inspectors never took people like me. Half-breeds were supposed to stay in the soil. We weren't meant to wear black. It belonged to the pure, those born under the Black Star, trained from the moment they could walk. Across from me sat 2 men, motionless as statues, their forms shrouded in dark, form-fitting uniforms. Their gas masks erased all traces of a face, except for twin circular lenses, black and unblinking, like the cold, glassy eyes of something that had crawled up from the depths of the ocean. They looked inhuman, like mannequin carved from obsidian, staring blankly into space, or maybe at me. It was impossible to tell. Their stillness unnerved me, a silence so dense it felt almost physical, pressing down on my chest. I hadn't realized how long I'd been staring until the silence pressed on my chest until I spoke without thinking. Hi, I'm Gregory Levins, my voice sounding painfully small, barely reaching across the room. The men didn't move, didn't even seem to register that I'd spoken. They didn't move, didn't react. They might as well have been stuffed and mounted. "Do not waste your words," came a dry, uninterested voice from my left. I turned. A pale man in a spotless long coat was hunched over a clipboard, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing his eyes, shadowed under a wide-brimmed hat. "I am der Seelenspalter, und Sie are both der Insulair. We are not here to exchange pleasantries, Levins. They are tools, young inspector, identical in look, function, and silence. To call them individuals would be missing the point," he continued, still not bothering to look at me, his tone dismissive and bored, as if he were explaining something as obvious as the weather. "Instruments, bred untrained to execute orders without hesitation or question. They do not think, and they certainly do not converse. Humanity has been stripped from them so that they may do what is necessary, without the hindrance of empathy." His words left me unsettled. Stripped of humanity? I glanced at the 2 Insulair, again still, silent, unreadable behind their masks. Do they choose not to speak, or are they simply incapable? I thought the role of an inspector was to serve and protect. What kind of work demanded the absence of empathy? A silence followed, heavy, loud silence, making the room feel empty. I hesitated, then spoke before I could talk myself out of it. "You?" I asked, turning slightly toward him. The Seelenspalter's pen didn't pause. He gave no sign he'd even heard me, my question hanging in the air like smoke, thin and embarrassing. Then, without warning, he exhaled slowly, shut his eyes, and tilted his head toward me. "Vat do you want?" he muttered, voice flat with exhaustion, like the very act of acknowledging me had already taken too much effort. My voice shrank in my throat. I felt like a child who'd just disappointed their grandmother. I just wanted to know. What is it you do? You look like a doctor." He returned his gaze to the clipboard, continuing to write as he spoke. "In some ways, I am a doctor. In others, an engineer. A carpenter." He glanced up briefly, eyes dull with disinterest. "Who works in flesh and bone. Healing," he added, almost as an afterthought, "is merely a byproduct of my curiosity." Then right back to his notes as if nothing had happened. A sudden sharp bang cut through the room as the heavy metal door swung open, and in marched the compactor. He moved with an air of rigid authority, his eyes as cold and sharp as steel as he surveyed the room. When his gaze landed on me, his lip curled in a sneer. I instinctively straightened, forcing myself to stand as tall as I could, my heart hammering in my chest. "Compactor, sir," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sir? Sir?" he barked, each word like the crack of a whip. "Is that vet you think I am? Some common officer you can address like that?" My face flushed hot. "Apologies, compactor." I didn't mean any disrespect." He stormed toward me, his boots striking the floor in sharp, deliberate steps that echoed off the cold metal walls until he was nose to nose with me, his breath warm and bitter. "You will refer to me as Yes, der Führer, and No, der Führer," he hissed, his German accent turning the words into a growl. "Understood, Mischling." I swallowed hard. "Yes, der Führer." With a tired groan, the compactor pressed his fingers into the bridge of his nose, as if trying to crush the headache forming behind his eyes. "Enough," he muttered, voice taut with restraint. "It pains me deeply to know they send a Mischling like you to shadow the inspectors," he spat, each word heavy with disgust. "But don't think for a moment that you belong here." My mouth went dry. The insult stung, but I forced myself to hold his gaze, knowing any flicker of weakness would only invite more contempt. "You are here for one reason only, Levins, because our last hound died. And you, half-breed." The word landed like bile spat sharp and bitter. I didn't flinch. I'd heard it 1,000 times before, always empty and meaningless. But when he said it, it sank deep like teeth. "Harnojing Morzan," his replacement, a placeholder, until V finds someone of true natural-born blood to take your place. Do you understand? "Yes, der Führer." His sneer deepened, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. "Gut. Keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. If you make a mistake, Vel, perhaps our Seelenspalter could find some use for you." His smile widened into something cruel, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You'd make a fine specimen on his table." I swallowed hard, nodding stiffly. "Understood, der Führer." I sank back onto the cot, feeling foolish and out of place, like a lamb dressed in a butcher's apron. The uniform, meant to mark me as an inspector, felt more like an oversized costume, stiff and heavy, swallowing me up. The compactor's disdain lingered like a bitter taste on my tongue. I adjusted my collar, struggling to breathe, as if the fabric itself were conspiring to choke me. The compactor moved to the center of the room, his presence casting a shadow over all of us. His voice cut through the silence like a knife, each word dripping with conviction. "This is a matter of life and death," he declared, his voice swelling with pride and fervor. "They are the last line, the only defense against the filth, the corruption that threatens our people. Only the chosen, the pure, have the right to stand here, to defend the humans, the ultimate race." His voice faded as he scanned the room, not looking at us, but through us. After a long breath, he continued, "We are the shining light in a world that longs to drown itself in shadows. Some claim that light creates shadows. They are wrong. Shadows do not come from light, they devour it. And it is our duty to hunt what hides within them." His words grew louder, his intensity building with each phrase, as if he were preaching a dark hymn of duty and sacrifice. I tried to follow, to keep up with the tide of his rhetoric, but his voice became hypnotic, a harsh chant that seemed more for his benefit than for ours. "Weakness has no place here," he spat. "You will bring strength, or you will fall." Fragments of phrases lodged in my mind: preservation of purity, sacrifice, Zelain Betveen, order and chaos. But they blurred together, abstract and unnerving. Around the room, the others sat motionless. The Seelenspalter, nodding along to every word, his gaze never leaving his clipboard, the two Insulae, staring at the compactor like stone statues, as though carved from the same dark stone. Then his tone shifted, and the room's temperature seemed to drop. "Sightings have been reported," he said, his voice lowering to a growl full of dark satisfaction. "Harpy activity, a few towns away." His eyes narrowed, glinting dangerously in the red light. "This is not a drill. This is real. They are venturing into the mouth of the beast." A tense silence rippled through the room. My stomach twisted as his gaze swept over each of us, finally landing on me again, his expression colder than ever. His lips curled into a sneer. "Prepare yourselves for the journey. On to you, Levins." He leaned close, his voice a dangerous hiss. "Vesh shall see if there is any steel in you, or if you will crumble like the half-breed you are." He straightened, letting the words hang in the air like a threat. So I do ask sleep well, my little mutt, for tomorrow is a big day. And with that, he turned, leaving me to sit in the red-tinged shadows, alone with my dread for what was to come. As the compactor's sneer faded in the dim light, he paused, casting a glance at the two insulaire lying rigidly on their cots, still as statues. His voice cut through the darkness, low and sharp. "Schlafen," he barked. I didn't know the word, but I didn't need to. Its meaning was clear. At his words, the two insulaire responded immediately, laying back with an eerie, calculated grace, as if every motion had been rehearsed to perfection. Their bodies tilted backward in unison. They reclined without any haste or humanity, each joint bending smoothly, each angle precisely the same, until they lay flat on their cots, gazes still fixed rigidly on the ceiling. Watching them settle was like witnessing some dart performance, each step practiced and flawless, as though they'd repeated it countless times before. There was no hint of relaxation or rest in their posture, only a vacant stillness, as if their bodies would stay exactly as they were until commanded otherwise. With a swift motion, the compactor twisted the red light free from the ceiling, taking it with him as he left, plunging us into an all-encompassing darkness. In that blackness, I could only make out faint shapes, barely able to see the insulaire forms, lying as still as blackened husks on their cots. Then, a dim blue light came from my left. The Seelenspalter held a small blue lead between his teeth, illuminated only the harsh, sharp lines of his face and his notebook, leaving the rest of us in shadow. He returned to his work as if nothing had changed, leaving me to sit in the dark, with only that small, ghostly glow and the unnerving stillness of the two insulaire in front of me. The blue light was weaker than the red, but somehow comforting, a gentler shade in a world of blood. I closed my eyes, uncertain of what horrors tomorrow might bring. Only God knew. The blue light faded into darkness, and slowly, the steady rhythm of footsteps and distant metal groaning seeped into my senses. A faint vibration hummed beneath me, subtle but relentless, like the slow pulse of a waking beast. I drifted, caught between sleep and awareness, as unseen hands shifted my weight and lifted me from the cot's rough canvas. The world tilted and swayed, soft edges giving way to jarring bumps and sudden lurches carried somewhere I couldn't yet understand. Somewhere cold, somewhere moving. I was jolted awake, the world around me bouncing up and down. I was no longer lying on my cot. Instead, I found myself wedged between the two insulaire, my body pressed tightly against theirs. They stared at me, unmoving, and I got the unsettling sense that they had been watching me long before I'd woken up. In front of me, the Seelenspalter scribbled in his notebook as best as he could, despite the wagon's jarring movement. Dazed and confused, I turned my attention to the Seelenspalter. "W, what happened? What's going on?" Not caring to look at me, he responded with a sarcastic "V are heading to the town." Not very satisfied with that answer, I pressed further. "But how did I get here?" The Seelenspalter closed his eyes, halting his note-taking, a look of irritation crossing his face, as if my question was annoyingly obvious. "Der Insulaire picked you up and brought you to the wagon. Now, quiet." I wished for silence. I obeyed, settling into an uneasy silence as the two insulaire continued to stare at me. Their gaze was unwavering, leaving me feeling exposed. "Where's the compactor?" The Seelenspalter sighed, defeated, and pointed his pen toward the front of the wagon. There, a short metal door loomed. I tried to stand, but, as if wired together, both insulaire moved at once. One seized my left arm, the other my right, pulling me back down into my seat, their grips firm and unyielding. The Seelenspalter muttered out a command, "Lassen." Instantly, the insulaire released me, their hands dropping in unison. Without a word or glance in my direction, they shifted their focus forward, their expressions as blank and rigid as ever, staring straight ahead. I stood up half, expecting to be brought once again back down, but no. I made my way towards the front. I gripped the cold, rough metal handle, but it didn't budge. After a moment's hesitation, I knocked firmly on the door. I heard a sudden jostle of movement, followed by the compactor's voice, sharp and impatient. "Vot? Who is it? We are not stopping to pee." Hesitant, I stuttered out. It's me." An absurd number of locks clinked and shifted behind the door before it finally creaked open, revealing the compactor's scowling face. What do you want? Who said you could come up here?" Put on the spot and already regretting my decision, I blurted out the first name that came to mind. Seelenspalter did. From behind, the Seelenspalter's reaction was instantaneous. The outrage on his face said more than his voice ever could. "Vihat? Nien?" The compactor looked at me, then back at the Seelenspalter, his expression sagging with weary resignation. "Ach, just get in here." I climbed up, squeezing into what I assumed was the cockpit. Inside, the air shifted hotter, heavier, thick with the stench of metal, oil, and something more primal, like sweat left to dry in cracked leather. The cockpit was claustrophobic, barely wide enough for two men to sit shoulder to shoulder. There were no proper windows, no open view of the outside world, only a narrow horizontal slit in the front armor, like the visor of a warhelm, through which the compactor stared with unwavering focus as he steered this wagon, tank, beast. "Locks the door," he muttered without looking at me. "Did you catch your beauty sleep, Mutt?" I opened my mouth to answer, but he immediately raised a hand to silence me. "I do not actually care," he said flatly. "Today will be your first day, possibly your last." His words unsettled me, not just the meaning, but the tone. Too gentle, too smooth, like venom wrapped in silk. I found myself replaying them in my mind, caught in thought as I turned to look at him again. He was trembling not from fear, but from anticipation. I didn't speak, just stared. Maybe he thought I knew something I shouldn't. I didn't know anything at all. He noticed me watching. His body didn't move, but his eyes slid toward me, sharp and twitching. "If you're going to feck me with your eyes," he said dryly, "you could at least buy me dinner first." I didn't react. I couldn't. The words were unexpected, wry, maybe even playful, but no less serious than anything else that came from his mouth. His expression shifted. Whatever flicker of humor had been there vanished without a trace. "Gregory, I do not say this lightly. I hate you," he said. "From the moment I heard we'd have to hire one of dirty blood, I felt nothing but contempt. I care more about the sheaths on the bottom of my boot than I do about you." His tone was steady, stripped of emotion, like he was reciting a report, not expressing an opinion. I didn't know what he expected me to say. Worse, I suspected it didn't matter. "Understood, Der Fuhrer," I muttered. A heavy silence settled between us. The air, already stifling, thickened further. Breathing felt harder than it would in a vacuum. "You think I'm cruel?" he asked without looking at me. He didn't wait for an answer. "I am not cruel, Evans. I am honest. Honest about veg var, veg var, veg var, veg gig reg veg go trialed, demands. Joy, peace, lies veg cold children so they can sleep. But you are not a child, you are a mutt." He stared forward again, fingers tapping the wheel in a slow, rhythmic beat. "Today, you earn your place or you lose it. If you die, you won't be mourned. If you falter," he turned to face me, "I'll kill you myself." His voice was flat, not a threat, just a promise. He reached down and drew a knife from his belt, setting it on the seat between us. "That is my mercy. You get one chance." The weapon didn't match the rest of his gear. It was handcrafted, wrapped in leather, the hilt carved from pale bone, the blade chipped flint. Primal, ritualistic. "Use it, or don't," he said with a shrug. "Whichever." Then he turned back to the narrow viewing slit, as if I no longer existed. I looked down at the knife. It was elegant, untouched by battle, yet it carried a strange weight. Not physical, a weight of intention. Why give this to me? Why something so personal?